Do you ever feel like something is missing, even when you've checked all of the boxes? Well, that feeling of something missing is often an absence of connection to the authentic self. Not the goals, not the titles, not the performance, but the soul's truth beneath all the roles you've been conditioned to play. And that's what this video is about today. Now, maybe you've managed to achieve the things that you believed you wanted in life, but deep down there's still a sense of emptiness or a quiet ache for something more. Now, this quiet ache I call the soul's yearning, and this yearning is the desire to seek. However, what we tend to seek, we tend to externalize it. In other words, we look for something other than ourselves to add to our sense of self, when in fact, the desire is to turn inwards. So there's this stir for something more, and the stir is usually a sign of awakening, and that's what the soul's call is. It's an awakening. And when we realize that what we're seeking is not an external thing, then we might begin to consider, who am I? Who am I before all things? So these deeper questions begin to surface. And these questions gives us the opportunity to discover who we are as the authentic self. So what is the authentic self? Some feel that the authentic self is more self-development, becoming the personality that's more true and maybe more honest, and it becomes a new idea or a new identity that you use to define yourself. But being authentic is much deeper than that. Being authentic is to know who you are at your core essence as a soul. Now, this core essence still needs to operate through a personality, but there's a discernment between the conditioned personality, which I refer to as the ego identity, and who you are as at your core essence as a soul before conditioning. So the recognition of that state inside of yourself, when it begins to awaken to the realization that that part of you is not being fulfilled or recognized, this is what soul work is about, which I also call shadow work. So this is what led me to doing what I originally called soul work, but I have recently called shadow work because they're very similar, except that soul work is deeper than shadow work. So when we get to realize our core essence, we uncover it by not striving, but by surrendering and by letting go of everything that we've been conditioned to believe about who we think we should be. And that's not necessarily easy because most of us have lived aligned in our conditioned personality. So the question that you might begin to ask yourself is, who am I before my conditioned identity? Who am I really? If I'm not my conditioned personality, who am I really? So allow me to introduce myself. Welcome to Starwell Astrology. My name is Shari, and I'm a Western tropical astrologer with a special interest in shadow work. If this information resonates with you and you are ready to get serious about understanding who you truly are, then please continue to watch this video, and I hope that you'll consider liking and subscribing. Also, I want to mention that if you have come to the point where you are going through this realization of not feeling fulfilled with the things that you have accomplished in your external life, then you might be ready to self-investigate and stop living from this false self, which I call the ego identity. I am offering a free shadow work workshop where we go deep, no fluff, just real healing every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. And if you're interested in joining us, you can send me an email at starwellastro@gmail.com. So This is when we might ask an important question, such as, what part of my personality feels like a performance? In order to answer that question, shadow work helps us to self-investigate through this practice I call self-witnessing. What is the self-witnessing practice? Well, it is a practice of self-observation without judgment. Now, we as human beings are aware and conscious, and the thing is that most of us live behind filters that are conditioned veils that we perceive our reality through. As we do shadow work, we start to recognize that these filters are conditioned core beliefs that we tend to experience our world through. By being able to witness ourselves, we see all the different core beliefs that are conditioned and programmed to operate through us as an identity. And that awareness allows us to start peeling back those layers to see who we are at our core essence, who we are as the authentic self. Until then, the false self, which I call the conditioned personality, is actually running the show. And that part of us has been running the show our entire lives. But when we start to awaken, we should notice that something is not quite right. Why are all my goals and desires for things in this world not meeting this part of myself that is not recognized? The unrecognized side of us is who we are at our core, and that is the authentic self. So the practice of self-witnessing helps us to gain access to what these conditioned beliefs are that are usually tied to trauma or wounds that cause us to react to our reality and our experiences in our reality. I want to share with you a portion of what I've written in my upcoming book, which I'm going to release hopefully by early next year. It explains how I came to practice shadow work and recognize that I was not living in alignment with what was authentic to me. So here's a portion of the book. True power lies in being open, humble, and receptive, not closed off in judgment or attachment to old stories. When we witness our conditioned behavior without interference, we regain the power to choose from integrity. We begin to align with the soul and live more authentically. Admitting I was unhappy was difficult, especially because I had so much of what I thought I wanted. There was an inner struggle. Who was I without the belief that shaped all my choices? Would I be happy if I followed my heart instead of my programmed goals? This was a turning point. I had to allow the ego to rage, to mourn the identity it had constructed, and to face the truth of how much I had compromised my happiness. I realized that I had been moving in the wrong direction, chasing things that could never satisfy me on a soul level. Holding space for this reckoning wasn't easy. It required patience and the willingness to witness my own unraveling. So, once we have witnessed ourselves, then we must face what we feel. And this is how we honor our emotional truth. And believe it or not, we tend to avoid and suppress or ignore our emotional truth. And it causes distortions to what we feel. The self-witnessing practice helps us to get some clarity on what it is that we truly feel so we know what is our emotional truth. Now, this comes with practice and really being honest and humble and to really align with what feels true and also accepting that there's no wrong way to feel. We've just been conditioned to believe that. So here's another excerpt from my book. From an early age, we're taught to share, to fit in, and to obey. These aren't inherently wrong, but they often lack context. They become rules rather than heartfelt values. We learn to suppress what we really feel so that we can conform. When we're young and we get into innocent disputes with siblings or friends, we're often told not to get upset and to make up right away. While this may seem harmless, it plants a seed for emotional suppression. Instead of being taught to sit with and understand our anger or sadness, we learn to shift quickly into more socially acceptable emotions, often at the expense of our truth. As children, we don't yet have the emotional vocabulary or context to process complex feelings, but rather than cultivating this inner knowing, we're taught to disregard it. Over time, we begin to believe that our emotions have no real bearing on us, and we abandon the natural guidance of our heart. Yet emotional intelligence is a divine birthright. It is the master teacher of all life experiences, and when nurtured, it becomes an intuitive navigation system, leading us towards higher choices. Instead of defaulting to compliance or suppression, we can learn to honor what we feel and act in alignment with that truth. When we suppress uncomfortable emotions, anger, grief, resentment, they don't disappear, they distort. By adulthood, many of us have become masters of emotional avoidance. We manage, deflect, or override unpleasant feelings rather than confront them. Even when we try to be positive, the bypassed emotions remain quietly governing our reactions. For example, blaming others can be a coping strategy that gives temporary relief, but it's a deflection, not a resolution. True healing comes when we turn inwards and when we take full responsibility for what life is showing us. Witnessing is the key that opens this door. It allows us to see that all roads lead back to ourselves, the source of every experience. So when we begin to witness, we can take responsibility for what we feel. And that awareness activates the heart. And from this internal gateway, we begin to cultivate clarity, compassion, and emotional maturity. The heart becomes a thermometer for aligned choices. And core beliefs are shaped by personal experiences, making this an individual journey. We must be willing to dig deeply into ourselves to uncover what we truly believe and why. Once acknowledged, emotional truths open the door to surrender and forgiveness, leading to higher perspectives and greater freedom of the soul. So we can become more aware of who we are as the authentic self when we align in our inner authority and we stay present through the practice of self-witnessing. We don't have to spend extra time each day to do this practice because as we're living our lives, we're just becoming more present and aware to what it is that we're doing. And this allows for a subtle shift to happen, become more conscious of the things that we're thinking and the things that we're feeling, how we're behaving, what our intentions are, and the choices that we're making, and how we're taking action based on those choices. Witnessing ourselves honestly and without judgment reveals this to us, reveals this hidden side of ourselves. And from this place, we start to see how we are operating based on conditioned behavior rather than what is true and authentic to who we are. Now, to know what's true and authentic to who we are, we continue to do the shadow work week by week, and eventually that will reveal itself to us. So if this message resonated with you, don't just sit with it, take the next step. Join my free shadow work workshop every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. This isn't surface level coaching. We go deep, no fluff, just real healing and self-discovery. So send an email to starwellastro@gmail.com to receive access. And also, so if you're ready to explore astrology as a tool for emotional healing and shadow integration, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe. Also, share this video if there's someone you know who is on their own healing journey. Your authentic self is already within you. Your job is to remember it, and you don't have to do that alone.